The stranger in the rain. It was a rainy Monday evening in San Francisco. Dot the kind of rain that didn't fall in sheets, but soaked you slowly, drop by drop. The streets were almost empty, except for a tall, thin man walking without an umbrella. His blazer was drenched, shoes squeaking, but he didn't seem to care. That man was Sundar Pichai. You wouldn't recognize him at first. No bodyguards, no flashy cars. Just a kind face, tired eyes, and a mind full of thoughts. Earlier that day, he had left a board meeting early. Something felt off. The world seemed louder lately, but less connected. He wanted to be alone. He wanted to think. As he passed a row of old buildings, he heard something, a soft voice, barely audible over the raindrops. "Excuse me, sir. Do you know about string theory?" Sundar paused. That wasn't what he expected. Most people in this area asked for food or change, not physics. He turned and saw a boy, maybe 14, sitting under a broken awning, soaking wet, wearing a garbage bag over his hoodie. His face was darkened by the shadows, but his eyes shone. "String theory?" Sundar asked, kneeling slightly. "Yeah," the boy said. "I read about it on this old phone I found. It's crazy. Everything's made of tiny vibrating strings. Is that real?" Sundar blinked. He was the CEO of Google. He had met heads of state, billionaires, and Nobel Prize winners. But this might have been the most unexpected conversation he'd had in years. "Yes," Sundar said softly. "It's one of the leading theories in physics, but it's complex." The boy smiled. "I like complex." Sundar sat on the nearby step. For a moment, he forgot about the rain. "What's your name?" Sundar asked. "Eli," the boy replied. "What's yours?" Sundar hesitated. "Sundar." Eli nodded. "You from India?" "Yes." "Cool. I'm from here. Well, kinda. Not. Really from anywhere now." Sundar understood. Eli was homeless, but he was curious. Sharp. Different. "Eli," Sundar said. "You said you found a phone?" Eli pulled out a cracked Android. The screen was shattered, but somehow still worked. "I charge it at the bus station. Wi-Fi from the donut shop works if I stand outside." He wasn't complaining. He was explaining. Matter dash of dash fact. Sundar felt something stir in his chest. "You like science?" Sundar asked. "I love it," Eli said. "But people just see a dirty kid. They don't care what I say. I tried to join a school club once. They laughed. Said I should join a cleaning crew. Instead, Sundar's hands tightened. "What do you want to do one day?" He asked. "I want to build stuff. I want to understand black holes. Make something that matters, but it's probably stupid." "It's not stupid," Sundar said firmly. "Not even a little." Ally looked surprised. Maybe no one had ever said that to him before. And then, suddenly, a loud honk. A car swerved and splashed water onto the sidewalk. Eli jumped up to protect the phone. Sundar smiled. "Priorities. Double quotes Eli. He said, 'Are you hungry?' Eli shrugged. "A little, but it's okay." "No, it's not okay," Sundar said, standing. "Come with me." They walked slowly through the wet streets until they reached a small cafe. Nothing fancy, but warm, bright, and filled with the smell of fresh bread. As they walked in, people turned. Some stared at Eli's clothes. A waitress looked nervous. Sundar noticed, but said nothing. He ordered 2 bowls of soup and bread. Eli was quiet at first, almost too quiet. Like he didn't want to breathe wrong, but then slowly the warmth of the place melted his hesitation. "You think I could go to college one day?" Eli asked between bites. Sundar leaned in. "I think," he said slowly, "the world would be lucky to have you in college." Eli's eyes watered. Just a little. No one had ever said that to him before, not even once. They talked for hours about quantum mechanics, about life, about what it's like to sleep in bus stops and pretend you're invisible so people don't yell. When they left the cafe, the rain had stopped. The streets were slick, glowing under the streetlights. "Thank you," Eli said, stuffing the extra. read into his hoodie pocket. Sundar smiled. Can I walk you somewhere? I sleep near the old library, the one that shut down. There's a dry corner there. Okay. They walked in silence. When they reached the old library steps, Eli turned. This was cool, he said. I don't really talk to people like that. Sundar reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. He handed it to Eli. My number's on here. If you ever want to talk or need anything. Eli took it, turning it over. Who are you? Really? Sundar chuckled. Just someone who believes in you. Eli nodded. Thanks, Sundar. As Sundar walked away, he didn't realize Eli had stayed there watching him until he disappeared around the corner. But someone else had been watching too. A man in a suit. Standing near the shadows, holding a phone. Eyes wide, he turned and walked quickly into a black car, dialing a number. You won't believe what I just saw, he said. Meanwhile, back in the Google offices, Sundar's assistant stared at the empty chair in the boardroom. She picked up her phone. He left 3 hours ago, she said quietly to herself, and he's not answering. She had no idea where he was, but someone else did. Someone who now had a plan that could change everything. Or destroy it. And it all started with a boy who loved string theory. Asterisk the boy who shouldn't exist. It was 2:13 a.m. when Sundar finally returned to his apartment. The door clicked quietly behind him as he stepped inside, slipping off his wet shoes and placing his soaked blazer on the chair near the entrance. The silence of the room wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. No noise, no distractions. Only the low hum of the city far below, echoing faintly through the tall glass windows. He didn't turn on the lights. He didn't need to. He walked over to the window, loosened his tie, and stared out at the glowing skyline. Towers flickered like fireflies in the night. But Sundar's mind was still at that broken awning, with a boy named Eli. Eli single quotes S eyes haunted him. Not because they were sad, though. They were because behind the sadness was something even more rare. Hope. Raw. Unfiltered. Desperate. Still alive. Somehow. Sundar had spent decades in tech. He had read 1,000 resumes, seen hundreds of startup pitches, interviewed brilliant minds from every corner of the globe. But this boy, a teenager with dirt on his cheeks and broken shoes, had something that couldn't be coded into a resume or quantified in a graph. He had hunger. Not the kind that soup could fix. A deeper one. The kind that refused to die even when the world gave up on you. Sundar leaned his forehead against the cool glass and closed his eyes. He knew he couldn't just walk away, but what would people say? What would the board think if they found out he was spending his evenings with a homeless kid talking about string theory and existential physics? But another part of him, quieter, stronger, whispered something else. What would happen if he did nothing? The next morning, just as the sun rose behind the hills, Sundar was already dressed, sipping a hot cup of tea as he opened his laptop. Before checking his usual stack of emails, he typed a name into the search bar. Eli Richmond. Nothing. He tried again, this time narrowing the query to recent local databases. Still nothing. No school records. No incident reports. No missing persons matches. It was as if Eli didn't exist. That unsettled Sundar more than he expected. Meanwhile, just 5 blocks away, Eli sat cross-legged behind the old library, the small piece of card still tucked safely inside his hoodie. He hadn't slept much. The soup had warmed him, but his mind had been racing all night. Questions, feelings, wonder. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Not just about science, but like he mattered. Like he wasn't a statistic or a shadow. Sundar had called him brilliant. Eli. He held up the card again, stared at the number, thought about calling. But what would he say? Hey, remember me? I'm the kid who smells like damp cardboard and dreams about dark matter. He laughed to himself, then tucked the card away. He needed to find a clean shirt. Maybe brush his teeth at the gas station sink before the manager showed up. Appearances mattered, even if the world pretended they do. I didn't single quotes T. But as he stood up, he didn't realize someone had been watching him. From the rooftop across the street. A camera lens clicked. A man in a crisp black coat adjusted his angle, zooming in, watching. His name was Caleb. He worked for someone very important, and he had a file to deliver. Back at Google's headquarters, Sundar's assistant, her name was Meena, walked briskly toward his office, holding a sealed envelope. "This came for you," she said, setting it on his desk. Courier didn't say who it was from. Sundar raised an eyebrow. The envelope had no markings, no stamp, just his name in neat black ink. He opened it. Inside was a single photo. Eli, sitting by the library. Eyes wide, holding a sandwich and staring at a screen filled with physics equations. And below the photo, a sentence. "Does he know who he really is?" Sundar froze. His hands went cold. This wasn't random. Someone knew about their meeting. Someone was watching. But what did that question mean? Who he really is? He looked closer. In the background of the photo, almost blurred, was a faint logo, spray painted on a wall. A triangle inside a circle. Sundar knew that symbol. It belonged to a research facility that had gone underground 10 years ago, after a classified AI project had accidentally created a cognitive pattern so advanced it was banned by federal science authorities. The project, called Mirage, had disappeared from headlines within weeks. Everyone thought it had been shut down, but maybe it hadn't. Maybe something had survived, and maybe someone. That same evening, Eli wandered back to the donut shop to catch the Wi-Fi signal. His phone, miraculously still alive, buzzed with a new notification. An airdrop. From an unknown sender. He hesitated, then tapped accept. It was a video. He pressed play. At first, just static. Then a distorted voice. "You are not who you think you are. Find the black book in the library ruins. Behind the third shelf, everything begins there." Then silence. Eli looked up toward the library. His chest tightened. It had always just been an old place to crash, a shelter from the wind. But now it felt like something else. With shaky hands, he zipped up his hoodie and walked across the street. Back in Sundar's apartment, his phone buzzed again. A new email. "No sender. Subject line. He's waking up attached." A second photo. Eli, standing outside the old library, his hand resting on the boarded up door. Eyes filled with uncertainty and something else. Determination. Sundar stood. He didn't know who was behind this, or why they cared about a homeless kid with a broken phone. But his instincts screamed at him. This boy wasn't ordinary. Not just intelligent, not just resilient, but something more. Something the world wasn't ready for. He grabbed his coat. This time, he wasn't going to wait. As he stepped into the elevator, his phone buzzed again. A message. No number. Just 5 words. "They're coming for the boy." Asterisk. The black book door groaned as Eli pushed it open. It wasn't a dramatic creak like in the movies. It was dry, muffled, like something half forgotten, sighing after years of silence. The old library, once a proud marble structure, was now a hollow skeleton. The roof had partially caved in. Vines wrapped around the columns. Shattered glass littered the dusty floor, reflecting pale shafts of light that spilled through holes in the ceiling. Eli had always thought of this place as just a shelter, a place where no one came, where silence ruled and secrets stayed buried. But now it felt different, colder, heavier, like the walls were watching him. The video had said to find a black book behind the third shelf. But as he stepped further inside, he realized the problem. There were hundreds of shelves, and most were broken, warped, or buried beneath collapsed debris. Still, he remembered the layout. He used to sit on the third shelf from the main door. He'd read old science encyclopedias with missing pages. Sometimes he'd imagine he was a scientist who had to solve the world's biggest problems using only half the instructions. Now, oddly, it didn't feel like a game anymore. He stepped around a rusted cart, his shoes crunching on bits of glass and stone. The air smelled like mold and ink. Faded posters clung to the walls, some announcing Space Week for kids, and exploring the solar system, both curling at the edges. Barely legible. Eli reached the third shelf. He ran his hand along the rotted wood, careful not to splinter his fingers. There was nothing on the top level, just dust and dead bugs. But then his hand caught something a seam, not wood fabric he knelt, brushing debris aside, revealing a small black book wedged deep in the shelf, hidden behind a stack of weathered children's novels. He pulled it out. The leather was cracked, but the gold trim on the edges still shimmered faintly. There was no title, no markings, just a single symbol pressed into the center of the cover. Triangle within a circle. The same symbol he'd seen in that strange message. Eli sat on the floor, legs crossed, and opened it. The pages were filled with strange diagrams, equations that looked more advanced than anything he'd ever seen. Wave patterns, neural clusters, notes written in jagged handwriting. But one page stopped him cold. His name. Eli Richmond project status. Active classification. Mirage. Subject 017 he. Blinked. What was this? Underneath the name was a photo of him, taken years ago, when he was younger, maybe 6 or 7. Standing in front of a tall building with men in white coats. He was holding a plush dinosaur. He didn't remember this, but something deep inside him stirred. A flicker of a hallway. A woman in a red sweater, a hand on his shoulder. You're going to change the world, Eli. You just have to be brave. Memory vanished as fast as it came. He kept reading. Subject exhibits exceptional neuroplasticity. Cognitive response surpasses baseline humans by 13.7x in abstract reasoning. Memory compression near total. Adaptive emotional filters observed. Note: spiritual questions triggered anomalous neural response, especially references to divinity, sacrifice, and unity. He read the last line 3 times. Spiritual questions triggered anomalous neural response. What did that mean? Before he could flip the page again, a voice echoed behind him. Put the book down. Eli spun around. 2 men in suits stood by the entrance, the little light glinting off the lenses of their glasses. They were tall, emotionless, and moving fast. He stuffed the book into his hoodie and ran. His feet slipped on the tile as he pushed. Past broken furniture, ducked under a crumbling beam, and darted through a narrow gap near the old librarian's desk. He could hear the men's footsteps behind him. Fast, controlled, practiced. This wasn't random. They weren't just chasing a kid. They were trained. He burst through the back exit, coughing as dust filled his lungs. He ran down the alley past the burned-out diner and through the overgrown lot behind the bus station. He didn't stop until he reached the chain-link fence that separated the neighborhood from the rail line. He dropped to his knees, heart pounding, the black book pressed to his chest. Who was he? What did this all mean? Why did strangers know his name and say he wasn't who he thought? Meanwhile, Sundar drove fast through the narrow streets of downtown. The message still echoed in his mind. They're coming for the boy. He didn't know who they were, but he had a feeling they were the same ones who'd sent that photograph. He pulled over near the old library, heart racing, scanning the sidewalks for any sign of Eli. Then he heard a sound. Footsteps. Rushed. Frantic. And then Eli. He emerged from the alley, hair messy, eyes wide with terror. Eli. Sundar called out. Stepping from the car. Eli saw him. He ran straight into Sundar's arms. They were there, Eli gasped. They were inside. They said my name. They had a file on me. Sundar held him close, scanning the shadows. Get in the car, Sundar said, his voice firm but calm. Now. They sped off down the street, Sundar's mind racing. As Eli caught his breath. He slowly pulled the book from his hoodie and placed it on Sundar's lap. You need to see this. He whispered. Sundar opened it. Page after page. His eyes widened. The language, the diagrams, the data. This was beyond anything he'd seen in his years at Google. This wasn't just research. This was human design. Neuroplasticity. Why? Cognitive mapping, quantum integrated pattern recognition. And in the middle of it, all Eli. Subject -017. A human child, with a mind engineered or awakened to operate far beyond natural limits. But that wasn't what shook Sundar the most. It was the final pages. They weren't technical. They were philosophical. Scribbled notes. Questions. Why does he respond to the name of Jesus? What causes neural flare-ups when subject hears stories of forgiveness, grace, and unconditional love? Is he drawn to spiritual archetypes because of programming? Or is there something more universal at work? Does he remember who he used to be? Sundar closed the book, his hands trembling. Whoever created Eli didn't just build intelligence. They had tapped into something deeper. Something ancient, spiritual. Maybe even divine. The car slowed as Sundar pulled into an underground garage, one of his private properties used for security clearance testing. No one knew it existed except his closest team. He guided Eli inside quickly and locked the door behind them. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Sundar spoke. Eli, I think someone's been hiding the truth about you for a long time. I don't know how or why, but you're not crazy. And you're not alone. Eli stared at the floor. Do you think I was built? I think, Sundar said slowly, you were born, but maybe with gifts someone tried to control. Maybe even hide. Eli bit his lip. There's something else, he whispered. What? I keep having these dreams. Always the same. A man in robes. Light behind him? He speaks in a language I don't know, but I understand it. He says, you are the one who remembers. Sundar felt his skin tingle. A chill spread through the room. Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed outside. The garage door shook violently. They were found. Whoever they were, they had arrived. And they wanted Eli. Not just because of who he might become, but because of who he might already be. Asterisk. The code of God pounding on the steel door was relentless. Each blow echoed through the underground garage like a drumbeat of war. Sundar stood frozen for a second, his body reacting faster than his thoughts, adrenaline lighting his nerves on fire. His hand reached for the security panel near the entrance. He typed a quick code. The lights dimmed to red. The emergency lockdown. Activated. A thick metal shutter descended behind the garage entrance, locking with a hiss and a heavy thud. Eli flinched at the sound. He had pressed himself into the corner of the room, clutching the black book tightly against his chest like a shield. His breaths came in short bursts, but his eyes weren't afraid anymore. They were focused, alert, calculating. How did they find us? Eli asked, his voice steady despite the chaos. I don't know, Sundar replied, walking quickly to the back wall. But we won't stay here long enough to find out. He pressed his palm against the biometric panel. A small door opened behind. A cabinet revealing a narrow stairwell that led deeper underground. Go, he said. Now. Eli didn't hesitate. He moved with purpose like a boy who had been hunted before. As they descended, the temperature dropped. The walls turned from concrete to cold metal. They reached a second door, which required both a retinal scan and a physical key. Sundar inserted the key and leaned in. The scanner flashed green, and the door clicked open. Inside was a narrow room lined with screens, backup servers, and 2 standing pods, one medical, the other computational. This was Sundar's personal think tank, a place where he worked on his most sensitive projects away from corporate eyes. Only 4 people in the world even knew this room existed. Now it would be their safe house. Eli stepped inside and turned slowly, his eyes scanning every inch. What is this place? He asked. My lab, Sundar said. The place I come when I need to work alone, when the world is too noisy to think. Eli nodded, then opened the black book again. There's something you need to see. He flipped to the final page, the one he hadn't dared to show earlier. On it was a diagram. It looked like a human brain at first, but not quite. Overlaid on top was a map of star constellations. And in the center of the map, one single word, logos, beneath it. A question written in shaky ink. Did he remember the source code of God? Sundar stared at the page. His breath caught in his throat. He had heard that word before, logos. In ancient Greek philosophy, it meant reason or word. But in theology, in the oldest scriptures, logos meant something more. In the Gospel of John, it said. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God. The Word .logos a divine pattern. A blueprint of the universe. Some believed it was metaphor. Others, a myth. But what if it wasn't? What if there was a code hidden beneath physics, mathematics, and consciousness itself that connected all things? And what if Eli could remember it? He sat down beside the boy and turned to him slowly. Eli, he said gently, has anyone ever taught you about religion? Eli shook his head. Not really. Just stories from books I found. I like the ones about Jesus. He helped people no one else would. He didn't care what they looked like. He just loved. Sundar swallowed. And when you hear those stories, he asked, do they make you feel something strange? Not just emotion, but like you're waking up. Isla looked away, then back. Sometimes, he whispered, sometimes it feels like I'm remembering something I forgot a long time ago. Like it's not a story someone told me, it's a story I was part of. A long silence followed, and then Sundar asked, the question he had feared to ask since the first moment he met the boy. Eli, do you ever hear a voice? Not outside you, but inside. Quiet, gentle, but so strong it feels like it could split the sky. Eli's eyes widened. He didn't need to answer. The look said everything. Sundar sat back. The pieces were beginning to form a terrifying, beautiful picture. Someone had found a way through science, or divine intervention to imprint cosmic memory onto a human soul. Not just intelligence, not just genius, but awareness. Eli might not be a mistake. He might be a messenger. Meanwhile, 50 miles away in a high-tech underground facility camouflaged as an abandoned warehouse, a man sat alone in a glass chamber. He was pale, wiry, his eyes twitching as he stared at a holographic projection of Eli's face. He's activated, the man whispered to himself. Subject 17 is awakening. A woman entered the room. Director, he's with Sundar Pichai. They're in a private lab. Secured location. The director smiled slowly. Good. Pichai was always drawn to purity, to untapped potential. Heal. Lead him to the final site. Should we intercept? No, the director said. Not yet. Let them run. It will speed the unfolding. Besides, we still don't know if he's remembered the language. The language? The woman asked. Yes, the director whispered. The speech of the infinite, the sound of the first word, the one that formed matter. He tapped the screen, zooming in on Eli's profile. If he speaks it, the director said, the world will change or end. Back in the lab, Eli was staring at the computer screen now, his hands moving over the keyboard like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Sundar watched, stunned. Double quotes. How do you know what to do? He asked. I don't know, Eli said. It just makes sense. Lines of code flowed across the screen, but they weren't normal code. They weren't programming. Languages known to tech. They were something else. Symbols, characters, sequences that shimmered and folded. As if reality itself was trying to interpret the words. And then suddenly the screen froze. An image formed. A glowing white structure. Spiral shaped. Infinite. A diagram of DNA overlaid with a waveform. At the center. A pulsing orb of light. What is that? Sundar whispered. Eli stared at it. I think, he said slowly, it's how the universe was spoken into being. Sundar blinked. Spoken? Yes, Eli said, like a word. But not a word like we use, a pattern, a tone, a truth, like the sound of everything loving itself into existence. And then, before they could process what they were seeing, the lights flickered. A low vibration filled the room. On the monitor, a message appeared. You are close. But they are closer. Sundar stood up. We have to move. They found us again. Eli nodded, holding the book tightly. But as they reached for the stairwell, the lab's lights went out completely. And from the darkness, a voice spoke. Calm. Male. Artificial. Subject 17. Surrender peacefully. or we will initiate reset protocol. Sundar grabbed Eli's hand, but Eli didn't flinch. He turned toward the darkness dot and then he spoke only one word dot, a word that didn't exist in any human language dot. And when he said it, the darkness trembled dot, the machines hissed dot, the voice went silent dot, and all around them. The room began to glow dot with light dot with memory dot asterisk, the remembering light. Pulse through the lab like a living heartbeat dot, it wasn't the blinding, sterile light of electricity or the harsh glow of emergency bulbs. This was something different, warm, golden, fluid. It shimmered like liquid starlight, flowing across the walls, tracing the shape of symbols that hadn't existed in the known world for thousands of years, or perhaps had never existed at all. Sundar stood frozen, unable to speak. His lips parted, but no sound emerged. He could feel the hum deep in his bones, like an ancient music returning after eons of silence. His skin prickled. His heart raced. And still, Eli stood calm-bathed in the light, eyes wide but unafraid dot in front of them. The voice that had threatened them, cold, synthetic, and confident, was gone dot, replaced by silence. Or rather, a different kind of silence dot, the kind that came before a storm. Eli's mouth was still open. The word he had spoken, a single syllable, foreign and beautiful, still echoed faintly in the space around them, though no speaker had carried it. What was that? Sundar finally whispered, his voice cracking. Eli turned slowly, his face somehow older now. Not aged, but deeper, wiser, like something long dormant had woken inside him, and was now staring out from behind those same soft brown eyes. I don't know what it means, Eli said, but I know it's mine. I've said it before, somewhere else. Sundar tried to steady his breath. You shut down the whole system with one word? No, Eli said. I didn't shut it down. I made it remember. Sundar's mind reeled. Doubt remember? Remember what? Eli stepped forward, placing the black book on the glowing console. I think this book was never meant to tell me who I am, he said. I think it was meant to help me remember what I already knew. And that word, it wasn't a weapon. It was a key. Before Sundar could respond, the screens around the lab flickered back to life, not with commands or system logs, but with images, videos, memories, a child in a chamber. Surrounded by machines, a woman crying behind, scientists arguing. A man in a robe reel, not imagine reaching for Eli as a baby, whispering in that same unknown language. Scene after scene flashed before their eyes, and Sundar saw something. That made his blood run cold. In one clip, a figure stood before a conference room of government officials. He was tall with sharp features and steel gray eyes. He paced slowly in front of a hologram displaying Eli's neural scans. Gentlemen, he said in a crisp voice, what we have uncovered is not just intelligence, it is convergence. Faith and science, scripture and code. The subject does not. Learn like others he remembers, and his memories contain a language that predates language, a song embedded in space-time itself. What we're dealing with is not artificial, it's original. Original? One official asked. Yes, the man said. The source. The first frequency, the one that built matter from meaning, the one religions called the Word of God. The clip ended abruptly. The lab was silent again. Sundar sat down slowly. His hands trembled. Eli, they didn't create you. They discovered you. Eli looked at him. Then why did they erase me? Sundar felt a lump in his throat. Because what you are scares them. It threatens everything they built. The systems. The power. The lies we call truth. Eli picked up the book again. This time, his fingers moved with purpose. He flipped to a page near the end, then held it out for Sundar to see. There was a sketch. A tree with roots that spiraled like galaxies. Beneath it. 3 words. Faith is memory. Sundar stared at it, confused. What does that mean? Eli closed the book. I think, he said quietly, that faith isn't believing in something we can't see. I think it's remembering something we already knew, but forgot. Sundar, leaned forward. And what is it we forgot? Eli looked him in the eye. That love created everything. In that moment, Sundar felt tears slip down his cheek. He didn't even try to stop them, because something inside him had stirred something that had been sleeping, asterisk. As a boy, Sundar had prayed. He'd gone to temples with his mother. He'd believed in something bigger than himself. But over the years, as he rose through the ranks of Silicon Valley, as data replaced wonder, as logic replaced mystery, he lost that part of himself. And yet now, sitting beside a child who may or may not have been born with memories from before the beginning of time, he felt it again. The old feeling, the one no machine could replicate. They sat in silence, both breathing softly, until the moment was interrupted by a sharp chime from the console. A transmission. It came from outside the building, encrypted but cracked by the code Eli had unknowingly spoken into existence. The message played. Subject 017 is approaching. Threshold. If he reaches activation site, global system integrity will collapse. Initiate termination sequence. Termination. Sundar stood up. They're going to try and kill you. Eli didn't look scared. He looked clear. Then we need to reach the site first. What site? Sundar asked. Eli pointed to the image that had appeared earlier. The spiral structure with the glowing orb. That's not a simulation, he said. It's real. It's buried beneath the mountains. How do you know? I don't, Eli said. I just remember. Sundar nodded slowly. Then we go. They packed what they could, data drives, food, the book, and escaped through the back tunnel that led to the service elevators. As they reached the street, the city felt different. Colder, quieter. Drones hovered overhead. Black cars lined the alleys. But they slipped past them, invisible in the shadows. Hours later, they stood at the edge of a vast valley near the foot of the Sierras. Sundar's private jet had dropped them off at a hidden airstrip. Now, with hiking packs and infrared maps, they climbed into the wild, led not by GPS, but by memory. Eli single quotes. He stopped often, closed his eyes, turned his head like he was listening to a song no one else could hear. And then he would say, "This way," and they would continue. They hiked through nightfall, through mist and stone, until finally the ground changed. Not visibly, but visibly. Eli knelt down, pressed his hand against the soil, and whispered the same word from the lab. The ground trembled. Just slightly, enough to feel. And then a section of the mountain opened. Not like a door, like a wound reopening. Behind it, a staircase spiraled downward, carved not by man, but by something older. They entered. It was warmer inside. The air buzzed faintly. At the base of the stairwell stood a massive chamber filled with light that had no source. The walls pulsed with symbols. And in the center, a platform shaped like a seed, hovering just above the ground. Eli walked forward. But before he could reach it, a voice boomed from the shadows. "You should not be here." They turned. A man stepped forward, gray hair, sharp eyes. The same man from the hologram. The director. He held a device in his hand. It blinked red. "If you take one more step," he said coldly, "this child will be erased. Permanently." Eli turned to Sundar. "You have to trust me." And then he stepped forward. The platform lit up. The chamber shook. The director screamed, pressing the device too late. It shattered in his hand, and Eli began to rise. Floating. Wrapped in light. And then he opened his mouth. And began to speak. Not with words, but with remembrance. The awakening chamber pulsed. Light flowed like breath, rising and falling with each word Eli spoke. But they weren't words in the ordinary sense, not syllables carried by sound or shaped by language. These were tones, vibrations, living frequencies that danced between dimensions and wrapped around the bones of reality itself. As the sounds emerged from Eli's mouth, the air thickened, not with heat but with meaning. Sundar felt it hit his chest like a wave. His knees buckled slightly. and he dropped to the ground, overwhelmed not by pain, but by something ancient. It felt like standing in the middle of 1,000 voices, all whispering the same truth. Each in a language he didn't know, yet understood completely. He wept. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. Not from sadness, but from the unbearable beauty of the moment. Somewhere, deep inside his consciousness, something was uncoiling, unlocking. A wound he never knew he had was beginning to close. Not by force, but by recognition. By remembering, he looked up at Eli. The boy was now suspended above the platform, his body surrounded by a luminous sphere that shimmered like water and starlight woven together. The pages of the black book he had carried fluttered open in the air around him, rotating gently, glowing faintly with golden script. And then came the voice. Not from Eli. But from within the chamber. Low. Deep. Not male. Not female. Not even human. It was the sound of origin, of the first spark. It wasn't speaking to them, it was speaking through them. Logos has returned. The walls of the chamber shifted. Symbols that had been etched into stone for millennia rearranged themselves, aligning, rotating into place like parts of a massive lock clicking open. The director still standing at the edge, staggered back, his face pale, his mouth open. But no words came. His eyes, once sharp with calculation and control, now trembled with something he had never expected to feel. Fear. True. Soul-deep fear. This isn't possible, he whispered. We erased the sequence. We deleted every iteration. We ran the purge through every line of recursive memory. He can't remember. He can't. Eli turned slowly, still suspended in the air. But now he was different. His eyes no longer belonged to a child. They belonged to something both infinitely old and impossibly young. Something human, and yet more. He looked directly at the director and spoke one final phrase. 3 words. Gentle, soft, clear. But they struck like thunder. You never could. And in that moment, the chamber responded. Light burst outward in every direction, not blinding, not destructive, but restorative. The sound followed it, a chime that rang through the bones of the earth. Every stone, every atom, every trembling. Cell remembered the pattern again. The original design. The logos. The platform beneath Eli lowered. The light faded slowly, not vanishing, but becoming part of everything again. The symbols stopped rotating and became still, quiet once more, and Eli collapsed into Sundar's arms. The boy was breathing heavily, eyes closed, body trembling. Sundar held him close, tears streaming freely now. Eli, he whispered. What? What was that? The boy stirred, just barely. The memory, he said. The first one. Sundar brushed the hair from his forehead. What did it mean? Eli opened his eyes. And this time there was no confusion. No fear. Only love. That everything was made from love, he said. But people forgot. They replaced wonder with control, curiosity with fear. They cut the music into pieces and called it science. They broke the melody and forgot the song. Sundar felt his throat tighten. But you remembered. Eli nodded. Not just me. You did too. So will others. It's already begun. The director slumped against the wall, his face buried in his hands. He wasn't a villain anymore. He wasn't anything anymore. Just a man who had tried to kill the sunrise. Thinking night would last forever. Sundar helped Eli stand. Together. They walked slowly out of the chamber and into the mountain. Air. The world looked the same. But everything had changed. As they stepped into the valley, a breeze swept across the grass. Birds sang. The clouds moved gently above, as if even the sky had taken a long breath. They found a quiet spot beneath a tall tree and sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Sundar spoke. Eli, why me? Why did you talk to me that night? Why ask me about string theory? Eli smiled softly. I didn't know who you were. Not really, but your eyes, they looked tired. Like you'd forgotten how to wonder. And I thought, maybe if you remember too, I wouldn't feel so alone. Sundar looked away, overwhelmed. And what about the others? He asked. The ones still searching? The ones still hurting? Eli looked up at the sky. They'll hear it. Maybe in a dream. Maybe in a song. Maybe in the kindness of a stranger. But the word is out there now. The real one. Not spoken with lips, but lived through love. And when they hear it, they'll remember too. And somewhere far away, a child stopped crying for no reason. Thought a man looked at the stars and suddenly felt hope again. A woman forgave her sister after years of silence. Stranger helped another stranger across a busy street, no explanation needed. And across the world, something had shifted, not violently, but quietly, like a seed waking up in spring, because the word wasn't a weapon, it was a mirror reflecting who we truly were, not data, not algorithms, but beings made from something no machine could replicate, love, wonder, grace, logos, and in that truth, remembered by a boy the world had forgotten, the world began to heal, not with noise, but with silence, with light, with remembering, asterisk.